record. So we have been looking at the United States in the Caribbean. Very nice topic, especially what is taking place with Trump turning the United States upside down and his supporters. Uh, the we are last week we would have looked at the relationship between the British North American colonies and the British West Indies. We're still going to continue to look at them, the relationship between both regions, right? And I think by now everybody should have had a fairly good uh, understanding of the relationship. No, but there are few questions that I want to ask. What is trade? What is trade?
Sir, trade
The
is
exchange
the
of goods and
exchange of
services
goods.
between
Carry
two or
on.
more entities. Oh, I'm
Carry on.
sorry.
Sir, trade is the exchange of goods and services between two or more entities with or without the use of monetary exchange in return
You're
for other goods and services.
you're really going to just teeth my definition out of my mouth and add your own line to it. This is rude.
Clear definition.
This
Miss
is
Girl, anyways,
rude.
The
continuing,
order.
sir.
Mm.
Go ahead. So basically, you said it. 1 second. Thank you very much, ladies. So you said that trade is the exchange of goods and services, right? Uh, it the truth and in fact, you can trade without monetary by getting money, or you can trade without getting money. You have barter system where countries barter. So for example, Venezuela and Dominica, there's a small Caribbean island by the name of Dominica, and there's a large mainland territory by the name of Venezuela, right? And so Venezuela trades with Dominica. Venezuela sends to Dominica oil, and Dominica sends to Venezuela banana. There's no monetary exchange, but the cost of the oil, they would send it in produce, right? So if the oil value maybe 50,000 US, they would send 50,000 worth of bananas over to Venezuela. And so countries today do trade with each other without the use of money. So we know for trade, when we hear the word investment, what comes to mind?
Money.
Huh? Money comes to mind, yes. What else?
Partnership, I think.
Come to mind as well for investing.
Yeah,
Sir, something long term.
investment.
Sir, putting money in somewhere, that's what comes to mind.
Putting something, all right, so you put money to something. So for example, if we're looking at investments, investment is uh, putting your money into a venture. I'm going to give you a proper definition next class. To make a profit. So you invest into something, or in order, sometimes it's not only to make a profit when you invest in something, but to increase your wealth, right? Go ahead for me, Hemming.
Sir, it's basically to allocate money or put money towards something and you're expecting some form of benefit from it.
Some form of benefit, perfect definition. Write it in the chat for them. Investment.
Okay, sir.
All right, thank you very much, Emin. So, in other words, if we're looking at investments, look, for example, I could say for myself, could, I have maybe $100, and I said to myself, if I put this $100 and I should use this $100 and I buy 10 bananas with it, I go to halfway tree, I sell the bananas. So I would sell my banana for, I buy 10 banana for $100. I could sell each banana for $100, right? At the end, you will see how much money that I will make from it. So you get a return on it. Also, a house is an investment. If you purchase a house, uh, you spend your money into a house every year, the value of your house will go up. If you're going to business, you're going to business to make some form of money. So investment uh, encapsulates all of these things. Now, the United States, as we're going to see, is going to be very much interested in investing in the Caribbean to make some form of profit from the Caribbean, right? And they are going to be very much interested when it comes to trade. Uh, so we look at the term trade and investment. Next class, we're going to look more into investment. When did the 13 North American colonies declare themselves independent? When they declare themselves independent?
July 4, 1776, sir.
Very good. So they declared themselves independence in July 4th, 1776. When did Britain recognize their independence?
In 1783.
1783, they would have recognized their independence. Correct. What was the trading relationship like between the North American colonies and the North American colonies and the British West Indies before the US declared themselves independent, or before the colonies declared themselves independent? What was this trading relationship like?
Sir, can I answer?
Go ahead for me.
Sir, read the full thing, that's all?
Repeat.
Sir, I did write it down. Read everything.
Yeah,
Alright.
you can write it. You can read it, no problem.
The relationship between the American colonies and the British Caribbean was fairly mutual and beneficial. The North American colonies received molasses, rum, and also tropical products such as ginger and pimento from the British Caribbean. In exchange, the American colonies gave them plantation supplies such as horses, which were used for transportation, staves for the hogshead, which stored the sugar and molasses, and food items such as saltfish, flour, and pork, which was provided as food for the enslaved. With
All
the,
right.
with the
Go
American
ahead.
with the
One
American
second for me, Austin. You're breaking up a little and you're not so clear. I don't know if other students are having the same issue.
sorcery back over.
No, you can. Well, I heard most of what you said, but you can start back over if you want.
The relationship between the American colonies and the British Caribbean was fairly mutual and beneficial. The North American colonies received molasses, rum, and also tropical products such as ginger and pimento from the British Caribbean. In exchange, the American colonies gave them plantation supplies such as horses, which were used for transportation, staves for the hogshead, which stored the sugar and the molasses, and food items such as salt fish, flour, and pork, which was provided as food for the enslaved.
Very good, very good. So you be a very good answer. I like that answer. So in other words, you would have explained that they had a very strong trading relationship, the North American colonies and uh the North America and the British West Indies. Anyone else want to share?
Sure, sir. Sure.
Go
I don't
ahead.
think it's my best work, but nonetheless, trade in relation to American and British West Indies colonies was virtually non-existent. Virtually is in quotation marks, by the way. Before 1776 due to the mercantilism Britain imposed. Mercantilism is the policy of colonies not being permitted to trade outside of its mother colony. Due to that restriction, American trade with the British colonies took, took the risk and traded behind the scenes. America gained molasses, ginger, and pimento and other tropical goods, while the West Indian colonies gained plantation supplies such as horses and staves rather, and food like flour and saltfish. Britain benefited greatly from the illegal trade, so they made no attempt to stop it. Colonists themselves received food items such as corn, oil, rice, and peas. This allowed them to save money on feeding the slaves, as the slaves were able to make their own provisions given the produce gained from trading. And the products that they received aided their productivity in the winter, as they were able to keep warm with crude rum. The trade between American colonies and the West Indies colonies was multifaceted and was mutually beneficial, so no hurt up came from about it. My handwriting
All
is very
right, very, very good. That is a very good response also. If we also look at how, so we know that there was a strong trading relationship. Now, my question is, and I like what you said, that Britain had a policy of mercantilism, which means, as you've rightly stated, that there was restriction when it comes to trade. But although there was restriction when it comes to trade, I will know, and you state for sure that they did trade. So what is the word that we would use to describe British uh, to describe British policy towards the trade between North America and the West Indies?
Sir, could you rephrase the question?
All right. So how would you this? All right. So Britain. So look at this now. Britain Britain, which is the mother country, she has her colonies both in North America and in the West Indies. So that is one, right? The next thing is that although she had her colonies in the West Indies and North America, she had a policy of mercantilism, which means that colonies were not permitted to trade with each other. How would we characterize the trading that was taking place between North America and the West Indies? How would we describe it?
Illegal.
So one, it was an illegal trade that was taking place.
unwarranted.
Unwarranted. Well, I wouldn't say unwarranted, but it was illegal because of the policy of mercantilism. But at the same time,
Beneficial.
Britain would have also turned a what?
A blind eye.
And also,
Britain would have turned a blind eye to the trade. So she pretended as if it wasn't taking place. And it was a very significant, it was a very, very significant trade that was taking place, because in fact, the entire plantation in the Caribbean, especially the British Caribbean, relied significantly on food items, food, clothing, materials such as lumber, the staves to make the hogsheads, The entire plantation system relied on those items for it to function effectively. Because if the food not coming from North America, then the enslaved people going to suffer from starvation. If they don't have the clothes coming from North America, people going to dress, people not going to be naked. And so a lot of issues going to take place right here as a result of the, the changes that is going to take place after their independence. Now, from your reading, how did the United States independence impact trade with the British West Indies?
Sir,
Go ahead for me.
sir, I would say um, the independence of the United States impacted trade with the British West Indies significantly. As a result of their independence, the British West Indies was no longer able to receive stags from their stags and other stuff, for example, food sources that could use to sustain the slaves. They had to resort to other goods such as mango, ackee, and breadfruit, which proved even more problems because
Mm-hmm.
seasonal and the enslaved refused to eat breadfruit as it was used to as provision for pigs, and so they felt really disrespected by it. They were not able to receive as much food, clothing as was before, as was given before, as well as materials, for example, like lumber. They were not able to receive that, so which affected their production, as they were not able to store molasses, which in turn caused the sale of sugar to plummet, and so their
Yes.
income was affected.
Very good. Very good.
Sir,
Go
sir,
ahead for me.
sir, and because they didn't have food to feed them, sir, a lot of them died of starvation
Mm-hmm.
because they also refused to eat the food, the mango and those and breadfruit, as Kiana said, because it was so called.
You think that they refuse to eat the mangoes and the breadfruits, and breadfruit came directly from Africa?
Sir, maybe it's because them usually feed it to the pig them when they were there, so they never did really want to eat it because they considered it as pig food. I don't know.
If we could, I will have to do some more research on that.
Paper said that mango was seasonal, so they didn't count it as food, and they did, and the enslaved refused to eat the breadfruit because it was used to feed pigs in West Africa. So that's
Repeat for me again, Emmons. Is Emmons or Gabriel?
Wasn't hemming, sir.
Gabriel, go for me.
Sarah was saying that the mango was seasonal, so they didn't count it as food, and the breadfruit was used to feed pigs. So I guess
Mm-hmm.
they feel disrespected and they don't want to eat that.
Could be. That could be a possibility. But at the end of the day, we know for sure that one thing we cannot discount from the fact is that they would have gone through starvation, because how much you have about one plantation could have roughly about 20,000 enslaved people. How much breadfruit tree you're going to have to feed them? It would be insignificant. It wouldn't be
Sure,
a lot. They
sure.
would same thing with the mangoes. Go ahead for me.
So I was just adding that an example of this can be seen where in Jamaica over approximately 2,000 slaves died as a result of the lack of food.
Yes,
So I forgot
that
to put
was
that.
also a problem. And also, some the enslaved people in the Caribbean at the time complained about uh, starving, food. They don't have any food, and some of them rebelled. Some of
Sir,
them rebelled. Once the US declared themselves independence and the trade was restricted for a period of time, uh, it was very bad for the Caribbean. In fact, from those time until now, anytime there's a problem in the US, the Caribbean suffers from it.
sir,
Yeah.
I mean, even though the US had declared independence, sir, um, British slave owners, sir, they still tried to find food to feed them, sir. So we can't hold that against them, sir. It's them, they just choose not to eat it.
The British slave owners still try to, yes, they still, but the mother country refused to allow the cheaper foods to come into the island or the different islands in the Caribbean. So I like how you're thinking, ladies, and it is okay if you write it in your for your exam. I'm just asking some question. Analysis is very important. You're thinking. Now, how did the United States independence impact trade with the British Caribbean? After 1776, when the United States declared themselves independence, to 1783, there was a big war. The American Revolution was taking place between this time. Because in 1783, what happened in 1783?
The British finally recognized America as independent.
Very good. Britain would have recognized. So the trade was severed during this period. Quite a long period, but the trade was severed. But even though it would have stopped to some extent, it continued. Because people, they always tried to sneak in goods in the islands, right? In 1783, after Britain recognized the independence, please note the dates, multiple
Sir, say that
choice.
again.
After 1783, when Britain would have recognized the United States independence, Britain said, listen, the colonies are suffering. The enslaved people are dying of starvation. So guess what? I'm going to allow North America and the British Caribbean to trade goods, but the only goods that they can trade are essential items. Essential items.
Monroe
And if
Doctrine.
they are trading those goods, you must use British ships. Why would they want them to use British ships? American ships could not come into the Caribbean in 1783. It said that the ships must be, trading must take place on British ships. Why British ships? Why do you believe that you should trade in using British ships?
To support I don't really know how to
Sir,
state
because
it.
it's the mother country.
Repeat.
Sir, I think it's because because Britain was the mother country. So
Britain was the mother country, yes.
I go.
Sir, to still support their
Sir, could it be because they still wanted to hold monopoly over the trade and prevent other things from
Very good.
yes.
Very good. They wanted to hold monopoly over the trade. Another thing is that I use another example. Britain and Blake. I'm going to use both of you as example. Britain would be United States. Blake is Britain, right? You have some goats. Are we going to look at it like in Paris. And Britain United, let us take out the United States. So Britain and Blake, both of you have some problems, right? Both of you have problems, but Blake has some, we call it, she has grass, and she has a lot of grass, and she has her goat, right? But that is Britain. Britain has grass and goat, while Blake has quite a lot of people to feed. Even though they have problem, if Britain don't send the goat meat over to Blake, then everybody in a Blake house going to die of hunger. Right? Everyone in Blake house going to die of hunger. But Blake now, you see how Blake is pompous, arrogant? She's going to say, although I know that if you don't send the goods over, people going to die, you still have to use my ship, my car to bring over the goods, or my truck. If you are bringing over the goods or the goat meat on my truck, then you have to pay a shipping fee. You have to pay certain fees because I'm not going to send over them free of cost. You have to pay for transportation. And so one of the main reasons why the British said only on British ships is because they wanted to maintain monopoly. And two, if you use British ships, you had to Americans had to pay for the goods to come on the ship, the British ship, and it would be very expensive. Go ahead, Fami Curry.
So, sir, wasn't it a case where they needed the stuff, like they needed the essential stuff? So why is it that they're taxing the US? I get that they're trying to be spiteful in a way, but aren't they suffering in the long run if US decides to pull out? Because yes, trading with them is a big thing for the US, but then the US have other people they could trade with.
That is a very good point. Very good point. They need the goods, but they are the ones pretending as if, they want to make the rules. And you're correct, the US will leave. The US will stop trading. I said, I don't really care about you and your trading. So in 1783, Britain allowed them to trade essential goods using only British ships. And then in 1804 to 5, Britain said, listen, this essential items is too broad. Every item now people classifying as essential, important items. You're only going to trade lumber and provision. What lumber you think that they are trading? What lumber? And what type of provision?
Mahogany and logwood, sir.
Mahogany, logwood, but what other type of wood was very important for the plantation sector? The staves that were used to make the hogshead.
Sir, I was going to
And what type of provision?
Sir, food for the plantation.
Food for the plantation. So Britain, by 1804 to 1805, said, listen, the only thing, everything we see are essential items. No. I need to qualify this essential item. The only thing that needs to be traded between North America and the West Indies is lumber and provision, nothing else. In 1804, the United States said, listen, I'm tired of this abuse by Britain. So the United States started to trade more with the French West Indies. They started to trade more with the French West Indies. Give me some territories in the French West Indies.
Haiti, Mar-
Haiti, uh,
Martinique,
Martinique,
Guadeloupe.
Guadeloupe. Yes. So these are
um,
some territories in the French West Indies. And so by 1805, two-thirds of the US trade from the Caribbean came from the French colonies. But Britain come again with another problem. Bully tactics. In 1812 to 1814, Britain said, I'm blocking all British ships from trading with American ports. Then they come again in 1822 and they pass another act and they said that they are going to lift some items from trade. So you can trade, but you can trade lumber, livestock, provision. But if you're going to trade all of those, you have to pay a 10% tax on all the goods coming in. Control. And so, how did the United States independence impact trade with the British West Indies? One, it would have affected them. What is the word we would use? How would it affected them?
Economically.
economically,
That sound correct here?
Sir, can you repeat the question?
How, which word would you use to describe the United States trade with the British West Indies after their independence?
It affected the United States negatively.
Very good. It not only the United States, but the entire trading system between the British West Indies and the United States, we could say that it affected them negatively. Both the Caribbean, both the British Caribbean, because remember, we have the Spanish Caribbean and the French Caribbean and the Dutch Caribbean, but the British Caribbean, it affected them negatively. So we know for sure that it affect. How do we know that it affected them negatively? Every minute Britain would have changed her trading policy with the US. She stopped trade between 1776 and 1783. In 1783, she came up with another policy. 1804, she came up with another policy. 1812, she came up with another policy. 1822, she changed another policy. She's always changing her trading policy because she's vexed. The Britain is vexed. The British is vexed. Why were they upset? Why were the British upset?
sir, because they were losing the United States as a colony. They were using it's essentially they were losing 13 colonies at one go, and you're losing money because they were trade. You're losing money, and you're losing because of it. You're losing slaves. You're losing
So,
your other portions.
so yes, and you're correct. Because the people declare themselves independent, you're vexed. So you find that every single time you try to perplex them to try for them to fail. And so, which brings me to the next question. How would you describe the British trading policy towards the US? What word would you use to describe it? If every minute you are changing the policy, and we know the reason why they are changing it every
Toxic.
minute. Huh?
Spiteful,
So I was saying
Spiteful,
toxic.
yes.
malicious,
Malicious,
Toxic.
toxic,
vindictive,
aggressive,
man.
arrogant. It was very
Manipulative.
unstable. It was hostile, and it was bullying.
Sir,
Would you say it's manipulative?
Yes, it is.
sir, wouldn't it be exploitive too because they change it every time to suit them?
For themselves. Go ahead for me, Emmons. Correct.
So could it be like an act of tyranny in some way?
It
Like,
is.
okay, sir, good.
It is. And so if we look at it, America, you just start as an independent country. The 13 colonies trying to get together, and Britain trying to stop the countries that they are trading with. Now, the effects of the British trading policy on the US. One of the effects that is going to take place is that the United States is going to say, listen, I am tired of this abuse. I am tired of this aggression. I am tired of the arrogance of of Britain. Britain feel like them better than us in the US. Right? I'm tired of this unstable trading policy. I'm tired of the Britain being very hostile towards us. I'm tired of them being, bullying us. The bullyism. We can't deal with it anymore. So what they are going to do is that they are going to increase trade with the French West Indies. They are now increasing trade. One of the reasons why they are so close to the French West Indies, because France was the country that helped them to fight against Britain. When Britain was giving them some very good licks during the American Revolution, France was the one that came to their aid.
Allies.
And that's one of the reasons why France gave them the Statue of Liberty. And so, effects of the British trading policy, one, there's going to be increased trade with the French West Indies. And we are going to see this progression where by 1760, 2/3 of the West Indian goods came from the French West Indies. By 1791, the Asian Revolution going to happen, and that is going to disrupt trade. But by 1793, France is going to pass a policy that, listen, all our ports are open to the US. Let us spite Britain. Britain feel that they have the upper hand. They feel that they are superior. No. We are giving all our ports across the world to the US. You can trade freely as you want. And then one of the things that is going to take place is that most of the goods that coming from the French West Indies came from Haiti. But by 1804, Haiti is going to declare herself independence. And as a result of that, the US is saying, no, we're not trading with no Black Republic. So, in fact, what is going to happen now is that Martinique and Guadeloupe could not supply all the goods. Go ahead for me, Barclay.
Sir, wasn't that hypocritical in a sense? Because the same way the US fought for their freedom and wanted other people to trade with them is the same way the Haitian persons fought, the Haitian enslaved, sorry, fought for their freedom. So in a sense, shouldn't they be like, partners in arm because they both went through the same thing?
No,
Yeah.
because freedom was for the whites. Freedom was not a concept for blacks. Blacks were property. We were considered animals. Even right up to today, you can see it. Go ahead, Fami Curry.
No, sir, I was saying the same thing that you said. It's because they're white. They don't care about the black people.
Yeah, they're not business. They don't care. And so one of the effects is that they are going to increase trade with the French West Indies. By the time Haiti come out of the picture, they are going to say, listen, Haiti gone, which is a very prosperous country. We have to turn to somewhere else to get our goods. Because Haiti, slavery was abolished. So by this time, they are going to say, listen, time to turn to who they're going to turn to next?
Cuba.
Cuba. Very good. So they are going to turn to the Spanish West Indies and they are going to turn specifically to Cuba. And so in 1787, Spain would have opened all our ports to the US. By 1819, this area here, Florida, was owned by Spain. Spain would have sold Florida to the US, right? And so they are saying now, the Americans said, listen, Cuba is right next door to us. Nice piece of property. The largest Caribbean island. Slavery still going on. We got to take Cuba. Oh yes, full of mountains, rivers, seas,
Yes,
people,
sir.
everything.
Plus,
And
they had
so
a lot of land to
a
build,
lot of land.
to build their
Oh
places.
yes. So what they are going to do is that they are going to start to trade more with Cuba. They are still trading with the French, West Indies, but they are going to increase trade with Cuba. So by 1840, almost half of Cuban goods went to the US. Sugar, molasses, hides, coffee. The Cubans also, Cuban goods were cheaper because slavery was still going on by 1840. And by 1848, Cuba would have imported most of the US flour manufactured goods. So Cuba is now becoming a prize area for trade with the United States. But let us look at the British Caribbean. Although during the period, Britain tried to stop trade with the British Caribbean, they still continued the trade. It was illegal, but not in great abundance. And it caused a lot of problem in the British Caribbean because you have years in the British Caribbean when they had natural disasters, and it was very difficult for them to say in a time of natural disaster in Jamaica, in Barbados, in St. Kitts, that you can't trade with the US. So in natural disaster, they had to allow them to trade. And the truth, and in fact, if you look in the Caribbean, look at the Caribbean Sea, Cuba has all of their Spanish police here. The Haitians have their army here. The Spanish have their army here. The British have their army here. It was very difficult to police the Caribbean. First of all, if a British ship reach right here, the Cuban just send some bomb and just bomb it up. They wouldn't use bomb, but they would have destroyed it. And so it was very difficult for Britain to police the Caribbean Sea. And so as a result of this, what we're seeing here is that it had a negative effect, but on trading between the US and the British North American, but she would have also, during the same period, because of the abuse, increased trade with the French and the Spanish West Indies. All right, please continue to read. We meet again tomorrow.
Sir, when you're posting this recording.
I'm going to post it by
Right.
5 o'clock.
Sir,
Go ahead.
also you forgot to post the recording from last week.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to post both of them at 5.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Have a good
No
day, sir.
problem.
Bye-bye.
Bye, sir.
Bye-bye.
Sir,
Go ahead.
I'm saying bye, sir.
Bye-bye. Have a great day, ladies.